Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for tuning in to an interview hosted by STEM for Femme. We are a nonprofit organization geared towards providing free science education to girls and other underrepresented groups. You can learn more about us at stemforfemme.com. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with a mechanical engineer from Montreal, Meredith. Meredith, do you want to start and briefly introduce yourself and your experience in STEM?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So, as you said, my name is Meredith. I just graduated as mechanical engineer back in December, before all this craziness, thank goodness. And since then, I haven't. I tried to get a job in my field, but not that I couldn't find any, but nothing was really coming to my mind, and it wasn't really going with my interests. So I decided to do a master's degree, which I'll be starting in a couple of weeks, in transport engineering. So transport engineering is really my field of interest, and to further that field and really become an expert in it, I decided to do a master's. During my bachelor's, which is at Polytechnique in Montreal, which is part of University of Montreal, I started a women in engineering club, so we have that in common. And I was also part of a couple of technical societies, one for a human-powered submarine and a Hyperloop type society, which is the vacuum sealed tubes that of like the trains that go super, super fast. Um, so I'm really excited to share more of my experience today.
Great, thank you so much. Let's get into some of these questions. So, what made you interested in going into these fields of like engineering and in particular mechanical engineering for you?
Well, I knew it was going to be science always. My dad was a nuclear physicist, so I was very, I knew the field quite well. And ever since I was little, I would go to his lab or I would go to his classroom, and I was very familiar with science. And in school, I really liked my science classes, not so much my math classes, which was more of a deterrent to engineering, but really liked my science classes. And then when I looked at all of my interests when I was thinking of going to university, all of them kind of aligned with mechanical engineering. So whether that be, I had a very big interest in cars, working with my hands. I really liked being very hands-on, experimental kind of side of it. And also a funny anecdote was I loved fixing mechanical pencils. Anytime that my friends broke their mechanical pencils from a very young age, I was the go-to person to fix them. So all of that together, I decided to go into mechanical engineering.
Great. And what schools or programs did you maybe consider in order to go into this field?
Well, it was pretty much the way that education works in Quebec. We have 2 years between high school and university called Cégep. So that's kind of like a preparation for university where you kind of narrow your field into either science or social science. So I did go into science at that point, and I took all of the classes that would interest me, such as technical drawing and robotics and digital electronics, just to see if the field of engineering was really something I wanted to do. And then for university, uh, Montreal has 4 very good universities. So I applied. I didn't really want to leave home, so I applied to University of Montreal, McGill, Concordia. And I decided I really missed. I did all of my schooling in French except for my cégep, and I really missed studying in French. So I decided to go to University of Montreal.
And maybe if you can speak to anyone who might be watching this, what do you think a prospective STEM student should start doing in high school to demonstrate their interest, maybe in a field similar to yours?
Sure. I think that's really an important thing to do, was just to talk to people and do research. While I was in Cégep, I actually did a shadow day at Bombardier through a program that I had at school, where I got to follow an engineer around for a day and see what she was doing. And if programs like that aren't available, I would say definitely research university programs to see what their classes are like, what they offer, see if that interests you. But even further than that, I would say look at people that you admire, at companies you admire, see what their engineers or the people that you see yourself in, what they went to school for. Because it might not necessarily be something that's super obvious, but once you see what they went to school for, you can even reach out to them and see what how they got to where they are.
Great, thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit about your first internship or job experience and what you learned that you couldn't have learned in school?
Sure. Yeah, so at my school, we have a couple of obligatory internships to get our degree, which I think is a really fabulous part of my degree, because before and after my internship, I had two very different experiences at school. I think an internship really teaches you to um, not necessarily apply what you've learned. It's even further than that, I would say. I think because what school is so theoretical that by the time you get into your internship, not that you're not necessarily using what you learn at school, but I think a lot of it is more experimental and hands-on than you would. It's not that, oh, I learned this in school, I'm going to use these numbers to calculate it and then apply it directly in real life. So it's kind of using the way that you've learned at school, your how your brain works to solve real life problems. For example, my first internship was very heavily mechanical engineering based. I was at a napkin factory, actually, in the maintenance department. So making sure that all the machines work, because the factory I was at made all the napkins for Quebec and like the north of Vermont. So they were like running 24/7. So you had to make sure that the machines were well oiled and everything was going well. And so a lot of that I had never seen in school because it was like even so specific to the machine that I was looking at. So that was, looking at the user manual that was dated from like 1976 and like stuff like that, that you kind of have to put it all together and then go get that information, go ask questions to people who work there and have worked there for, 40, 50 years and try and, find a solution that way. So I think that is kind of what the internship teaches you, is really how to use your learning experience in the real world without necessarily using your theoretical knowledge 100%.
Mm-hmm. So, what personality type or sort of person do you think would suit a job going to school for mechanical engineering?
Yeah, so I don't think there's necessarily one specific type of personality, but I think there are certain qualities that help. I would say pretty open-minded, not saying no to a lot of opportunities, because you want to be curious, want to always look for a better solution, which I think is a big part of engineering. Um, Hardworking, would think would be the first one, definitely. As I said before, math was not my favorite subject, but through hard work and getting through it, I now appreciate math, even though I don't have a particular like affinity for it. So I think willing to put in the work, curious, methodical, having a certain method to your thoughts so that you can kind of repeat the same thing with different problems. Um, and yeah, no, I would say that those are the main ones.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you're in grad school. So can I ask a little bit about like what you're studying there and like what that's like in school?
Sure. Yeah, so I decided to switch to civil engineering for my grad school because it aligns more with my interests in transport. So I've decided to go into public transport and ensuring a more green future, I would say, in transport. That's really what I like in that field. So I decided to go to grad school mostly because I am actually going to the same school I did my bachelor's in, because they have an expertise in transport. So I really wanted to continue on with teachers who are experts in their field of, whether that be public transport or rail or anything that, makes the country and the world to an extreme look at more possibilities in transport that would be good for the environment, not looking at necessarily just electric cars, because yeah, that's fantastic to move from, petrol to electric cars, but there are other solutions out there already. And I think to be able to have that impact culturally within transport is something that I really like and I really think would benefit society as a whole. Even not that macro. I don't have a big enough head to think that I'm going to completely change society, but I think that I would like to be part of a change in the way that people use and think about public transit.
Mm-hmm. Those are like the extremely important types of jobs that our society depends on. Yeah. So other than that, are there any like cool projects or maybe cool things that you've learned either in school or in your internships that you've worked on in the past?
Yeah, during my bachelor's degree, I founded a committee for women in engineering, which my school didn't have at the time. They had a chair, which I was actually part of as well. So I was paid as a student. Then the chair dissolved, and we decided to found a student society to kind of continue the work on. And I'm really, really proud of it because we do a lot of outreach with small children in you know, primary schools to introduce them to engineering, but not just introduce them to engineering, but show them female role models in engineering. We also do conferences and industry tours and a mentorship program for the students already at the school to show them, you know, whether it be female engineers already in the field, because there's a huge disparity in how many engineers who are women actually graduate and how many actually stay in their field and become professional engineers. So we wanted to show them that it's a possibility. A mentorship program also, we pair students with engineers in their field so that they can kind of get a mentor and a boost at the end of their bachelor's when they're kind of like losing momentum, not really sure where they should apply for jobs. So that I think would be a project that I'm immensely proud of because I think it touches a lot of different people in the kind of the pathway to engineering and even after engineering. So yeah, I think that would be the main one.
So speaking of this like gender inequality that exists in a lot of these STEM fields, are there any obstacles that you faced, maybe specifically due to being a woman in such a male-dominated field?
I would say that I'm pretty lucky in the fact that I don't have a lot of experience with direct discrimination, especially my colleagues, people my own age. I've had a really fantastic experience, but there has been certain issues, I would say, with older people in the administration of my school. For example, um, they weren't very, you know, helpful in certain situations where I needed to take a break from school. They were kind of insinuating that I couldn't take a break from school for womanly problems, which I didn't agree with me very well. You know, and you know, people who I have like I like a lot, very a lot of respect, but they just make certain jokes that are kind of sexist, and then you can't really call them on it because they'll say, "Oh, it's just a joke." For example, my neighbor, who I've talked to many, many times about engineering, because he's an engineer as well. He cannot remember that I'm in mechanical engineering, and always thinks that I'm in chemical or industrial, which are more women dominated engineering fields, and it's just bothers me in a in a very micro way. But in general, I would say that those are kind of more discriminatory things that I would hear. But at the same time, I'm more advanced in my field as well, in the way that I didn't really hear anything when I was younger when it would actually have had an impact on my, you know, getting into engineering, even because I was very lucky. My dad was very encouraging. My whole family was very encouraging.
So, given this unfortunate fact that women are underrepresented in a lot of these fields, specifically mechanical engineering, how do you think we should encourage more young girls into these fields?
I think that having role models is really, really important. Not just female role models, I think all kinds of role models that encourage girls to go into science. I think science teachers, people who perhaps are in their school and like offer, you know, different opportunities, like for example, a principal that institutes a robotics team or a mentorship program for like girls in high school who get mentored by students already in STEM in university, something like that. I think it's great. I think it's the right thing to do because it's really hard to ask young girls, young students to go and find that for themselves. They might not even know that they want to go into STEM fields. And to have all of these open opportunities that allow them to find it for themselves, I think would be the best opportunity, the best way to encourage it. Um, and yeah, just be as open as possible, be not be even if you like try and put, by I say you like the general person, I would say try and put your preconceived notions to the side, instead of saying, when a young student says like, oh, I'm thinking of going into engineering, instead of saying, oh, well, that's going to be really hard because of all the guys in it, like, say, that's great, what kind of engineering are you thinking of? You know, stuff like that, that doesn't immediately put even an idea in their head that, oh, it might be too hard and it might be so much easier to do a different field. So yeah.
So finally, to wrap this all up, to give some advice for the people watching this, and in particular the high school students who might be watching this, what advice do you have for those who are interested in STEM or what you do, just in general?
I would say really research. Like, the internet's a really big place. I would say look at opportunities in your own hometown, like whether it be, you know, mentorship programs, or just, you know, a lot of universities even make videos and make content relating to STEM fields that it might be interesting for you to just watch, or, you know, read books. LinkedIn, I find, is really great because people in the industry themselves write a lot of articles. Companies write a lot of articles about what they're doing. A lot of companies have their own blogs where they share, you know, projects that they're working on. So I think that's a really great option to kind of see what's out there, see what different industries are doing, and see how you could get integrated into an industry that interests you.
All right, great. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day for doing this interview, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.